Hi guys, my name's Rachel Ralston and welcome back to my channel, The Painted Zebra. Today is going to be a bit of a different video. It's Sepsis Awareness Month and I am a sepsis survivor. I had sepsis in December 2017 and it was one of the most scary experiences of my life. So I wanted to share my experience and what happened to me in the hopes that, I don't know, help someone or help someone feel less alone, raises awareness of sepsis, and maybe tells you to trust your gut. So I'll start off by saying on the first day I started a new medication. It was called oxybutynin. Now it's because I have incontinence and it was meant to help my bladder. So when I started to get stomach pain, I rang my GP and he said, look, stomach pain is a side effect of oxybutynin, and it also wasn't uncommon for me to get stomach pain, so he thought the two coupled together could be why I had such severe stomach pain. So he said to go off of the oxybutynin for 24 hours and see how I did, and if I was no better, to go into the emergency room. So for the next few hours it kept getting worse and worse, and in the end I was curled up in a ball on my bed and I couldn't move. So we had to change my ileostomy bag. So I tried to sit up and Mum explains this like I screamed like a crazed animal that had just, you know, someone had just tried to kill it. I screamed and I felt like I'd been stabbed. Like that was, honestly, I felt like I had been stabbed in the stomach. So this is a little bit gross, but it's part of the story. So then I immediately started vomiting feces. So I started vomiting poo, basically. Mum pretty much carried me to the car and we drove to the emergency room at my main hospital. Now, there was a hospital that was 5 minutes away, and then there was my main hospital that was 40 minutes away. But every time we went to the hospital 5 minutes away, they said they weren't equipped to deal with the issues that I have and how severe my issues are, and I was always ambulance transferred to my main hospital anyway. So Mum thought, nah, we're not calling an ambulance because they would have took me to the hospital 5 minutes away, and we're not going to that hospital because it's just a longer process to get me to the 40-minute hospital that was 40 minutes away anyway. So Mum put me in the car and I kept vomiting, and I think at this point I was starting to go into shock. I don't remember most of the car ride. So then we got to the hospital and they took me straight back. They didn't make me wait in the waiting area, they took me straight back. Now, the first doctor I saw, he did a x-ray and it showed that I had a intestinal blockage, but they could not see what was blocking it, why I had this blockage. We assumed it was something to do with my stoma, my small bowel, my pseudo-obstruction history. So they put an NG tube down and said they would monitor me. Now at this time it was late at night, I think it was like 1 AM or something. So I told Mum to go home and get some rest, thinking it would be like all the other times where I had a blockage, it would clear, I would get better, and it was just another one of these times. I mean, I felt worse than I'd ever felt before, but I had no reason to believe that this wasn't going to be like all the other times. So they decided they'd do a CT scan, and the hours between when they gave me the NG and when they decided to do the CT scan are very foggy to me. I just remember laying there in pain, calling out in pain, saying, please help me, someone help me, God help me. Like, I was in that much pain that I couldn't stop myself. I was moaning and screaming and asking anyone to help me, but they couldn't give me more pain medications because I'd had everything that was standard for a blockage, and they thought that was all it was. So I was inconsolable, and a nurse came up to me and she said to me, suck it up, everyone else here is in pain, and just shut up. And I was in that much pain, I didn't even say anything to her, but I was just like, this was the worst pain I'd had in a very long time, maybe that I'd ever had. And because everyone just thought I had a standard blockage, they couldn't understand why I was making such a fuss. This part is where I start getting details from everyone else. When I've written this down, I don't remember a lot of it. The last thing I remember is they took me into the CT scanner room. Apparently I was put on the CT scanner as the images were coming up. I went into cardiac arrest. So thankfully they had the images and they saw that I've got a gastric pacemaker because of my gastroparesis, and they saw that the wire that was on it had somehow perforated my bowel, and I was filled with feces and I had gone into septic shock. So they knew they had to act fast. Apparently I was rushed up to the operating theatre. They cut me open so quickly that I have this huge nasty scar. So this is the scar here. This bit here has been fixed a little bit, but this, I mean, this is 2 years after and it's still pretty bad. But so they cut me open because they couldn't be neat. They had to try and save my life, and honestly I would rather a scar over being dead, so it really doesn't bother me. But Mum was told that the surgery would take a couple of hours, so she came up to sit at the hospital to be there when I came out of surgery. The surgery took about 10 hours. They removed part of my small intestine, refashioned the stoma, and they tried to clear out as much of the infection as they possibly could. And all this time I was connected to IV antibiotics, trying to get one step ahead of this infection that was ravaging my body. So this is details from everyone else, but apparently they took me up to the ICU where I stayed in a coma for 2 days. They put a central line in my neck, which I've still got the scar from, gave me IV fluids, antibiotics, pain medications and sedatives. So when I came to, I was still feeling very ill. Like, very ill doesn't even begin to describe it. I felt like death would be a better option because I was that sick that I just, it's the worst feeling that I've ever had. So when I came to, I was told that I had a 20% chance of survival. And I decided that I didn't want to stay in ICU where only one person could visit me for 5 minutes once an hour. I wanted to be shifted to the ward where I could have my family and friends surrounding me. So the doctors were very reluctant, but they agreed, and they put me into a room with like a video camera so they could monitor me from the nurse's station. I had a one-on-one nurse, and yeah, so they'd done all that. This bit's a bit funny, but I was put on ketamine for pain and some sort of sedation. So ketamine is known for causing hallucinations, and I thought that the Wiggles, the old style Wiggles, if you're Australian you'll know them, were playing on the wall behind me, and so they were playing on the wall behind me, and the doctor kept asking if I was having hallucinations, and I knew they would take the ketamine off me if I was experiencing hallucinations. So I kept saying no, that I wasn't experiencing hallucinations, but meanwhile the Wiggles were playing on the wall behind me. So the next few weeks, they were a blur of feeding tubes, procedures, people coming to visit and not knowing if it was the last time that they would see me or if I was going to get better. I had visitors come from all over Australia. I had multiple CT scans which showed a collection of sepsis on my liver, and they weren't sure that my liver would survive it, but it thankfully did. They started me on NJ feeds and told me that I would likely never eat again. So people asked me how I emotionally coped with all of this while I was so sick. But when you're this sick, you're in sort of a survival mode. You don't really think about everything that they're telling you. You're just trying to get through the next hour, the next minute, the next day. At least that's how it was for me. So all this news didn't really hit me until I recovered. I spent Christmas and New Year in the hospital, and I also was in and out. So I had Valentine's Day, St. Patrick's Day, all those sort of holidays were all spent in the hospital. But Christmas, everyone bought me presents. Mum had a whole heap of Colourpop for me, which is like my favourite makeup brand, and I was that sick I could barely look at it, which Mum said that's when she knew I was really sick, because I had all this new makeup. I didn't even want to play with it. I was just sort of like, oh yeah, that's nice, like, you know, and it looked, probably from the outside it looked like I was unappreciative, but it was just, I didn't have the energy or the strength to show happiness about presents and things like that. So over the next few weeks I was slowly improving, and I went home with silver chain care as there was a flu epidemic in the hospital, and I was told if I was to stay and catch it that I probably wouldn't survive it. So I had to keep going back and forth between home and hospital for more procedures and outpatients appointments. Over the next 6 months I learned how to eat small amounts of food. My organs slowly improved to the state where they're functional. So I've beaten the odds. I wanted to say that there are so many cases of sepsis, and it's important to know the signs of sepsis. I'll put some links down in the comments below for further information. So I just want to say thank you to, first of all, my mum, my friends, especially the doctors and nursing staff and all the health professionals that played a part in saving my life, and of course God for getting me through all this. So thank you for listening to my story. I am one of the lucky survivors that are here to tell the tale. I know that there are so many people that don't survive sepsis, and it's a scary reality, but I just wanted to say thank you for listening to my story. If you have any comments or questions, please leave them down below. I also wanted to do a sepsis Q&A, so if you have any questions about my story with sepsis in general, leave them down in the comments and I will compile a video with all your questions. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time here on The Painted Zebra. Bye!